Hello, I'm Rich Shortall, Executive Coordinator of Fire Safe Marin. We recently held a series of workshops for each of the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authorities by zones to share the incredible work they have accomplished this year. We've compiled this highlights reel to show you a few samples of the many projects completed in each zone, addressing the 8 focus areas of the MWPA Action Plan. As a review, these are defensible space, home hardening, vegetation management, evacuation improvement, ignition reduction, public education and outreach, alert and warning, and residents assistance. As Marin residents, we can all take pride in these accomplishments. It is our tax dollars at work, helping us to adapt to the threat of wildfire. So let's take a look at some of the highlights.
Black Point, which is off Highway 37. 37 is a neighborhood that we've identified as having one way in, one way out. A lot of these roads we could not get a fire engine through. So Mike's done some really good work in trying to clear some of the evacuation routes. So now we can actually make access into these neighborhoods and they can get out in case of a fire. We just ran the numbers this morning for our matching grant program, and I got to look up at my wall, and I'm going to smile because from July of 2020 to last month, we've handed out $1.487 million in matching grants. So almost $1.5 million, which, sounds like a big number, but the bigger number is the amount of work that's being done in the public. So remember, that's a 50 cent on the dollar matching grant. So they've done at least $3 million and more than likely closer to probably $4 or $5 million. Some of these big projects that folks are doing in the community, may cost $50,000 to $60,000 for windows and siding, and they're only getting $5,000 from us. But I think we're doing some really good work in the community. We're hardening homes, really teaching that house out approach and really having a big positive effect within our community.
We've divided our programs up into really programs that address defensible space or vegetation management on a regional scale. We call these either our hazardous and invasive vegetation management program, our shaded fuel break program, and a variety of others. These are funded from the 60% pot of money, primarily from the MWPA. And I'm going to give you some before and after photos of projects that were completed in the last 12 months. These photographs are from the Central Marin Zone, but I don't want to discount my colleagues. Kentfield, Ross Valley completed a huge number of projects in this last year, over 180 individual projects in the Ross Valley alone. Importantly, and I'll wrap up with this, I want to talk a little bit about our biggest project, both in terms of work that we completed last year and what we're going to do in the future. This is our Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break. We expended almost $250,000 last year on the planning and implementation and environmental review for this project. This is an effort to create a 38-mile-long shaded fuel break around the perimeter of the community. It's within 200 feet of houses that lie at the edge of all of the Ross Valley communities, from Corte, Madera to Fairfax on the western edge, and then Sleepy Hollow and parts of Fairfax, parts of San Anselmo on the eastern edge of the community. We're going to reduce dead and down vegetation. We're going to reduce invasive vegetation like French broom and Scotch broom. We'll work on treating eucalyptus groves, dead oak trees that have accumulated over the last 30 years, really focusing on this area closest to homes to create a safe buffer where firefighters can protect the community and hopefully prevent a wildfire in the wildlands outside of the neighborhoods from ever entering the community where it can burn multiple structures like we've seen so frequently in the last decade. We're going to treat about 1,100 acres of land when we complete this over the next 3 years. It'll touch almost 1,700 individual parcels, public parcels like open space lands, MMWD lands, other local park lands, and a huge number of individual residential parcels. We think that this project's going to cost about $6 million to complete, and about half of that funding will come from local tax dollars from Measure C funds from the Corte in the central zone, and the other $3.25 million is going to come from a CAL FIRE grant, which we learned was awarded to us just last week. This is going to allow us to hit the ground running and get this work done quickly to provide the most protection we can to the community.
Start with an example here of a couple of our slides I have, kind of showing what we're trying to do. So you can see we have a couple that you can see the vehicle there in the background. This is one of our access dirt roads, and you can see this is a before and after, and you can see, you know, it's a pretty significant change. The vegetation growth rates is always going to be a challenge, but you can see we're really opening it up, increasing our sight lines, increasing clearance, and hopefully minimizing or reducing fire behavior along the road edge there. You can see, especially on the downslopes. We're finally going to have the compliance in place to start engaging with some of the evacuation route clearance in Inverness, in Bolinas, in Stinson, in Sea Haven, and other areas that we've been wanting to do, but we've been on hold with MWPA funds. We've been able to do a little bit of work. So we're really excited that we're kind of going to get the green light to do some work in some of those areas after a long year of kind of wading through the compliance piece. And then, you know, we have some grants coming along too that aren't attached to MWPA, continued grants to do work in the San Geronimo Valley and Nicasio Valley. And we're very much engaged because of the jurisdictional stuff in the Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break, which, you know, has some county jurisdiction on it. And we're really excited about that opportunity. And I don't know if Todd Lando and discuss that as part of the Ross Valley piece, or the Central Marin, but really exciting collaborative opportunity that I think Rich and everyone else is really hopefully going to set the tone in the future for how we need to start looking at how we manage the landscapes as it relates to forest health and fire protection, because these little jurisdictions, fire is it doesn't recognize jurisdictional boundaries.
Mill Valley Shelter Fuel Break. So this is the actual project where you have boots on the ground, and it's a very substantial, large budget, but this is a pretty substantial project. It's great to see, finally all the work paying off, and going through all the meetings, site visits, bidding from contractors, environmental compliance. And as you can see, this is actually a 47-acre project where we're developing 150 feet of defensible space from structures into county parks land. So these are actually some photos. Unfortunately, I do not have after photos because we are currently removing all this brush, combustible material off the hillside as we speak. And so this area is Glen Drive and Heather Way, where, as you can see, there's a substantial amount of invasive removal. So we have a lot of broom here. And once that broom is pulled from the hillside, it's going to look way different And on the backside of this picture, which you can't see, I was about 30 feet from structure. So you can just imagine the potential risk here if this broom wasn't removed. So it's great to see that, we're doing a lot of good work in the community. This is Del Casa Road and Sarah Drive. On the left-hand side, that's what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to achieve a shaded fuel break by limbing up trees, removing understory, making sure the grasses are maintained. And that's the type of material on Sarah Drive that we're removing. So a lot of good work being done out there.
If you're not familiar with LRAD, these sirens are much more than just your standard, rotating beacon siren. You're going to get much more than just a tone out of them. You're going to get verbiage. You're going to get information, just-in-time information is what we're calling it, that could be critical to that incident or the scenario that we're running into. And each one of these sites that you see on this map, and quite a few of them popping up throughout our southern region, will be able to be independently operated and activated with their own specific messages if necessary.
I think the biggest accomplishment is to see these projects from start to finish. People need to understand there's a substantial amount of time and effort that goes into these projects. It's not like we're just going out there and cutting vegetation. There's numerous meetings, there's site visits, there's CEQA compliance, there's contractor bidding, public outreach. There's a lot of time and effort that goes into these large scale projects. And, all this couldn't be done without everyone's help and assistance from partnering agencies and the residents. So I think that's the biggest accomplishment, just getting everyone together and we just reduce the risk in the community.
We've got this image on the left. The bottom one is the before and the top is the after. So again, we're leaving the upper parts of those trees and really focused on clearing out that understory. We also have, a lot of this is very manual, labor heavy work, where we're doing this by hand, not using heavy equipment in some of these, especially more fragile areas, and then hauling out that debris or lopping and scattering it, depending. So you can see some of that work in place. To date, we have touched 15 acres in the Marinwood area, over 80 throughout the San Rafael area, and there's honestly probably over 700 homes that have been directly impacted. And directly is work within 100 to a couple hundred feet. There's obviously a lot more homes that get protected kind of more indirectly from that work.
That's the team that we've been building, and Quinn's leadership and kind of with the vision for this program and how we've really fleshed that out has been really successful, as we've seen in her discussion previously. But I'm also really proud of the partnerships that we've built, both with the community members individually, with community groups, different stakeholder groups, but also with our kind of our service partners, different organizations we've been partnering with to complete our work, and really working on that. It's been great to see.
I have thought about the team because I am very excited about our team, and Kate undersells herself, and I think it's important that our community understands that we don't just have a team full of fire prevention gurus or firefighters. We also have a really strong ecological team. Kate herself is a forester. We have an arborist. We've got multiple people with various environmental degrees. So we really are, and I guess that feeds into, what my answer is, which is that 360 approach. And I think really being able to look at this, not just certainly as an emergency manager, I look at this as a risk reduction and how do I protect my community. But we are also looking at this from a long-term sustainability piece, and not wanting to see our community be devastated by a wildfire but also restoring our landscape, right? And treating things in a way that improves not just disaster outcomes, but improves daily quality of life. And then also looking at our one-on-one educational approach and policies and all this stuff with the 360.